Howdy, folks. Happy Christmas Eve. Well, I don't know if you can be happy on Christmas Eve if you were out on the roads like I was. It's, the Black Friday is the day when everything gets started, and Christmas Eve you get a chance to see how people procrastinate because I got stuck in traffic on one of the major thoroughfares in the area because there was an accident. People are running
Which
around.
road? I come through Buffalo enough. You might as well tell me. So I know.
The 33 that heads right from the airport out to downtown.
Right. Okay.
There was an accident there. There was a little bit of snow, so the roads are a little slicker. But it's mostly the fact that I had to go to a supermarket to pick up some things for Christmas Day, and it's bedlam. It's like before a blizzard bedlam, like eggs, and bread, and everybody ripping their heads off. It's nuts. I mean, get this stuff done 2 or 3 days beforehand, and not wait till the last second. Anyway, there goes my rant. But we have an extensive pre-show here because stuff piled up over the last few days. But we'll start with this, and we'll look at the game, or we'll talk about the game for a brief minute. But everybody was talking about the Carolina Hurricanes wearing the Hartford Whalers jerseys, and it did look cool. I mean, I haven't seen those jerseys in a while, but Jack Edwards, the Bruins play-by-play announcer, brought up something during the broadcast, and we'll let Russ talk about it. But I think in a sense he's right, but we'll see. We'll talk about it here.
Okay, I do think he's right because if you're going to bring back a jersey from a team that doesn't exist anymore, if there was a retired number from that team,
right,
before they went to their demise, then that number should stay retired. Like nobody should wear it. And so Dougie Hamilton wore it, and Lori McKenzie, one of the daughters of Pi McKenzie, found out through Facebook. And so that's considering he just passed away and it would have been his birthday a few weeks ago, and it's hit pretty hard in the sense that she was a little shocked.
And remember, they're playing the Bruins. This is the former Hartford, and Pi McKenzie played for the Bruins and the Whalers in the WHA, I believe. So
And so, the Bruins, he's beloved there as well. And she said she understands it from both sides, but she also brought up, well, hey, what if it was a bigger player? Like
Gordie Howe.
Let's say it was Gordie Howe, for instance. She didn't say names because she didn't want to say, hey, I'm not comparing my dad to those guys. But she's saying, what if it were a name? And that was a great point. If it was Gordie Howe, there probably would have been a lot of outrage. So I do think while Jack is known for ranting, I've sat down, I've eaten with Jack. I think he's a good guy. He's so passionate. He's just passionate. And this is what happens. Now, the USA Today article did a good job of pointing out that they're going to be playing in Boston. If they wear those jerseys in Boston, they really should invite the family down or say something about them, or show some photos or something if they're going to continue using that number, don't you think?
Well, and I was just checking the roster here because I don't know whether Carolina has retired number 9 because Howe's number was retired in Detroit and also retired in Hartford. Nobody is wearing number 9. I don't know whether anybody has worn number 9 since the team moved to Carolina, but I mean, you have to respect the number that was retired from the previous franchise.
Right.
I mean, if the stats transfer over, then the numbers retired should transfer over as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And another good point came up. I was talking to a Hurricanes fan just a moment ago because, it's not like they even have any of the Hartford stuff hanging in the rafters in Carolina. Now, that's something where maybe if Tom Dundon looks at things, that's a nice connection to have, and maybe he should move forward with that and start doing that. And Gordie Howe would be the perfect one to start that with, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, from what the feedback was after the game, people thought this might be a one-off, but it was so popular, and I believe the game was a near sellout or was a sellout, that they may go down this road again. Well, if they do, then you better acknowledge the fact that number 19 is retired.
Yeah. And I don't blame Tom Dundon.
I don't blame Dougie Hamilton either. I mean,
I don't blame Dougie Hamilton. Like, he just put on the jersey. He doesn't know. But people in that organization, whoever was deciding or a driving force to bring back the jerseys, should also, look at their history. You should always look at a team's history and see what you're uncovering, so that you could pay the proper respect. That's all. And I think that's all the McKenzie family is looking for here.
Yeah, and I don't know what the precedent is from like other franchises in other sports. Like, are numbers like Otto Graham and Jim Brown retired in Baltimore because that team was the Cleveland Browns? Was that moved over, or are they acknowledged by the actual Cleveland Browns, which is not the same franchise as the one that was moved?
Okay, but let me ask you this. All right. So if you go to MLB.com,
right,
could I get a Babe Ruth Boston Red Sox jersey made?
I would think so, but there's no number because they didn't wear numbers back then.
But would they make me a Ruth Red Sox? I bet you they wouldn't.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, please. I mean, you could order a Ron Mexico jersey from the NFL website back.
No, but if you remember, they even stopped people from making like Wayne Gretzky Flyers jerseys because people would make right? Remember we'd seen one. And so I'm willing to bet, even though Babe Ruth played for both teams, that once the Yankees retired it, that all of a sudden you couldn't just make, like, what if the Red Sox had Babe Ruth Day and they gave out Red Sox jerseys with the name Ruth on it? Do you think that would cause a stir?
It would, but I mean, my point is like any blank Red Sox jersey could be a Ruth jersey in the sense that they didn't wear numbers.
Right,
so,
but I'm just saying, let's say they did.
Right. If they wore if there was a number 3, like, or if he played it for the Red Sox after he played for the Yankees instead of the Boston Braves, then, I mean, you could ask for a Boston Braves Ruth jersey. I mean, he did play for them. He did play for the Red Sox.
That's only if, like, Mitchell and Ness makes the Boston Braves, right? Nobody may make that anymore. But when Jordan was with the Wizards, he wore a different number, I believe, than what he wore.
Well, remember, he wore 23 and 45 when he came back, and then switched back to 23 with the Bulls. And I don't remember what his number was with. I thought it was 23 with the Wizards.
I'm not sure.
I don't know. I'm not
sure. Again, that's a little different anyhow because it's a different team and it has no connection to the other team. This one does have a connection to the other team. So this is the same kind of stuff that Expos fans would get mad at with the Nationals until the Nationals actually adopted their records and everything else. If you remember, that took a few years.
Yes. Okay, so that's one. Number 2, and I'm not a big UFC fan. I have nothing against it, but I was back in the day, I was more of a boxing fan, and now I've lost my taste for boxing, and UFC mostly is pay-per-view, and when I do see of it, it's mostly on highlights, and it's exciting, it's brutal, and some people really, really love it. And I'm not the biggest fan, but I don't hate it. But if you want an example of how a sport is, to be called Mickey Mouse, then this story about John Jones, Russ, tell everybody about that, because I think it's pretty shady.
Well, he's tested positive for performance-enhancing drugs before, and he just tested positive, and so the governing body, I think it's WADA, won't license him in Nevada. Now, they're supposed to have this fight in a week. December 29th, I think, is the date. So instead of canceling the fight, the UFC decided, well, we're just going to relocate it to a state that doesn't care. So they're going to bring it to California. And so now anybody who was going to go traveling to Vegas for that fight, you can't. And I'm sure you'll get refunded your ticket money, but again, you won't get refunded your travel money. And so now on a week and a half's notice, they're relocating the entire fight because it's a state that doesn't recognize WADA or the testing. And instead, what the UFC should be doing is basically suspending Jones again, and maybe forever. I don't know what their policies are, but this has happened multiple times. And it's a shame because I do think John's a good guy. I actually was at a media luncheon with him, sat next to him for a couple of hours, got a feeling. Now, of course, the guy's going to be a little bit on his guard or whatever, but he wanted to actually see pictures of my dogs. Like he was actually a pretty decent guy. The issue here is, I think when people use performance enhancers, it's hard to get off them. Yeah. And I think this is the issue with John, because he's a great athlete. His brother used to play for the Patriots. I think won a Super Bowl with the Patriots in the NFL. And now it's like, you know, this is a hot button issue, because just imagine if this were like, when you wouldn't move in Olympics, but just imagine if it was a heavyweight fight. I mean, I know back in the day, I used to get mad when an over-the-hill Muhammad Ali was only allowed to fight in like 3 or 4 states because nobody else would license him, right? Because they knew it wasn't a good idea.
And they tried to move his fights when he got suspended for being a conscientious objector in Vietnam. They tried to move the fights to different venues because some states were banning him on that.
Which was ridiculous.
Which was ridiculous. I mean, but they did try to move them to, like, I think there was one in Central. They tried to move one to like something in the Caribbean, and they tried to do that just for him to be able to fight, and he was basically blocked everywhere. So
like in February of 2018, Jones's license was revoked for his second steroid suspension. So this is his return from that. And he doesn't come up clean again.
Yeah, at a certain point, you guys got to essentially, like I don't know what the rules are in terms of banning, in terms of it's a set amount of time each time, but at a certain point, there should be a penalty that increases exponentially as you get more suspensions. Like if Familia got suspended for performance enhancing drugs, he would be suspended for a year, I think, right?
Yeah.
Because he had one before. So, at a certain point, it should be you're banned for life, because you're honestly not stopping what they don't want you to do. So,
and Jones beat Daniel Cormier. Many look at him as the greatest of all time, and it's terrible what's happened here. But the fighters, like Daniel Cormier tweeted, he tested positive again, and he put an exclamation point. Like this guy,
if I lost to that guy and, it was considered a loss, I would feel pissed off that I lost to a guy who's an obvious steroid cheat. That goes against the rules of the game, and they wouldn't have rules in place if it didn't. So, yeah, I mean, if I'm Cormier, I'd be mad.
Now, the guy he's fighting, Alexander Gustafsson, Alex the Mauler, says, now we understand why you all didn't take the WADA test. You can be on rocket fuel. I'm still gonna finish you, John. So he doesn't care. And then then there are people saying, well, I had tickets to Vegas. So I mean, it's a bad situation. It really is. Yeah. And and it's a 4-hour ride for now if people go to Vegas, if they want to try and get LA. I've done it. It's through the desert. It's not horrible. Not as horrible as Peter's hat, but it's not horrible.
Wow. Welcome to the show, Peter.
What's your horrible drive through the desert, Russ?
Oh, going from LA to Vegas, or Vegas to
nothing.
LA.
It's 15. Boom.
Yeah, but it's boring. It's like tumbleweeds.
Aren't you going through Death Valley?
No, you don't go through Death Valley.
You go near Death Valley. So the best way to do it, and if you want to really make it fun, you cut down a Barstow and you cut down this little highway that takes you into where the Palm Springs Valley is. But it basically looks like you're going through the desert in Breaking Bad with all sorts of weird ramshackle places. I drove through there once. I was like, this is bizarre.
Yeah.
This is like, okay, this is creepy. Like, there's creepy prairie stuff because we have flat nothing for thousands of miles.
Yeah.
But that was real creepy.
Yeah. Even the gas stations seem like they're back from the 60s, Mike. It is weird.
I have to mention this because I saw this on Friday, and there's nothing I hate more than media members who pump themselves up as being the arbiters of what is right and what is wrong. And I'm referring to a man by the name of Bill Ballou, who writes for a newspaper in Worcester, Massachusetts, apparently covers the Red Sox. And he came out with a I guess from his mind, a well thought out reason of why not to vote for Mariano Rivera for the Baseball Hall of Fame. Well, Mr. Blue, you're an idiot. Yeah, I mean, honestly, you're up there with that fat moron Bill Conlon, who would vote against anybody who had a chance of being 100%, having 100% vote for the Hall of Fame. And I mean, he came out and says, "Well, nobody deserves to be 100%." Baloney. I'm sorry, if you're talking about who the most dominant closer in the history of baseball is, it's Mariano Rivera. So if you're out there, if you're basically some fanboy who's basically saying, I'm not going to vote for any Yankee because I'm a Red Sox reporter or a Red Sox fan, I think there are a lot of Red Sox reporters out there who respect Mariano Rivera and the quality of the player that he was. I'm sure, Mr. Blue, you're not going to have any problem voting for that steroid cheat, Big Papi, when his time comes up. Because
I watched Mariano Rivera, beat my New York Mets in the World Series. I would vote him in every time.
Yeah.
I have nothing against Mariano Rivera. The guy was great and he was lights out. If you are going to vote as a fan, even though we all have a fan in us, even when we cover things, we're writers, we have credentials. But if you're actually going to vote as a fan, then you shouldn't vote at all. I agree.
Right. And, taking it, and so we can pencil in Mr. Blue a couple years from now or next year, whatever it is, when Derek Jeter comes up, that this tool is going to vote against Derek Jeter because Derek Jeter is a Yankee. Because we don't
know that. He just may not like Mariano Rivera because Rivera was the key cog in beating his team. So we don't know.
So, I mean, I don't particularly like Wayne Gretzky as a player. I know that's a cardinal sin. But if I had a vote for the Hockey Hall of Fame and he was coming up, I would vote for him. He's a Hall of Famer. Mariano Rivera is a Hall of Famer. It doesn't matter what your affiliation is. You vote for a guy based on his qualifications to be inducted in the Hall, not because you're a fanboy.
This only happens in the Baseball Hall of Fame voting. It doesn't happen in any other sport where anybody worries about if somebody's unanimous or not. And this stuff has been going on since the 20s. And a lot of times when it went on early on, it was based on you not liking the player, you not liking the player's race, and now it's pretty horrible to see in the 21st century that this is still carrying on.
Or a guy like Jim Rice who didn't get along with the media, and that delayed him being inducted in the Hall of Fame by probably a couple decades. Because a lot of people thought his career and his stats were Hall of Fame caliber and it just took a long time for him to get in there. I mean, it's
just stupid.
It is stupid. So, okay. We'll take some questions in the chat for, a good chunk of the show, but we have a few things to talk about here. Hello Hockey World. Today is Monday, December 24th, Christmas Eve, 2018.
I'm Peter Tessier in beautiful snowy Winnipeg.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology. It's 45 and sunny here. We're great.
And I'm Michael Agello, and this is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com, who, by the way, it was green grass, and it started snowing this morning in Buffalo, and I posted a little 6-second video of that, and something like from the Weather Channel, some Twitter feed that had like 150,000 followers wanted to use my video for their Twitter feed. So my little 7-second video of snow falling in Buffalo is out there.
It's the only thing anybody's ever wanted from Buffalo other than chicken wings.
Yeah, don't say Anchor Bar.
I didn't say it. I was trying to show goodwill towards men and not say it. You did.
Yeah, well, don't show goodwill. There is no goodwill towards men at the Anchor Bar because somebody got murdered there. And this is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. Let's start with the game that I watched yesterday, and we're not going to make this a Leaf buzz, but I have to start with that because it was a rather interesting game. But it pointed out a bunch of things about the Maple Leafs, Peter, that I've been saying for a while, and whenever my opinion is illustrated by what happens, I have to talk about it. The Leafs are on a 4-game winning streak. They're the second best record in the NHL. There's no reason to be, morose or down about the Leafs right now because they're having a lot of success, but the warning signs are still there. And last night, second of back-to-back games, they played Garrett Sparks. This is his 7th game of the year. He's played 4 bad ones and 3 good ones. He's 5-1-1, so the record does not reflect him being inconsistent, but he has been, and he even admitted that he was not good yesterday, and Babcock was essentially saying the same thing. Jake Gardner, 2 bad giveaways on 2 goals in the first period. The Leafs, for the second time this month, fell behind Detroit, a bad Detroit team. Fell behind them 3-1, came back, tied the game, fell behind again, came back again, tied the game with 7 seconds on a Tavares goal, and then win it on a Jonathan Bernier special through the pads from Kasperi Kapanen for the 5-4 win. Now, this is the thing. The Leafs are being covered up. Their flaws are being covered up by that offense that has played so well. They've scored 23 goals in the last 4 games. Tavares, Marner, they're doing everything is going great. The problem is their defense is just not good. And if, God forbid, Frederik Andersen gets hurt, they are toast.
It's true. I mean,
Yeah.
I just wrote a rookie power rankings article for GTS that'll post. I'm not sure when, but Garrett Sparks isn't in there. He has 5 wins, but he's not in there. And I think you make a great point on a lot of different fronts here. I do think this is actually, could Garrett Sparks be a bone of contention by the end of the year if he doesn't do as well as Kyle Dubas thought he would after all that's gone on with the goalies and McElhinney doing well and everything else? It could be a talking point. It really could be.
Well, and this is the thing, and Peter, Winnipeg dealt with this over the last couple of years with 3 goaltenders and the concern of losing one on waivers when Hutchinson was there, and they had Pavlik and they had Hellebuck. If the Leafs go out and get a 3rd goaltender, Sparks has to clear waivers if they want to send him down to the American Hockey League. Even though he's struggling this year, even though he's been inconsistent, somebody with the way the goaltending market is right now, somebody will claim him. So that forces the Leafs to carry 3 goaltenders. I don't think ideally Dubas wants to do that, but if he keeps getting inconsistent goaltending out of Sparks, and they're in a race with Tampa for top spot in the Eastern Conference, then he's got to address it.
Yeah. I think though, I think the Leafs can keep riding out and unless a major injury happens to Anderson. And, you know, like I still say Freddie Anderson he's my top guy for the Vezina right now. And I don't think you'd have any way of saying there's anyone close to what he's doing right now. One of the things I think is super interesting about that is, Mike, if the Leafs can hold on till to the trade deadline, we know what happens right before then. Right. It's waiver day and everyone gets dumped. And that's when, if they had to do it, they know they have a deal in place. They've just got to ride it out for a little over 2 months, right?
Right.
Basically 68 days or whatever it is.
That's a long time, though.
It's a long time, but that's when they can send him down if they need to keep him, right?
Yeah,
that's a safe point.
They unless can sort of bum rush him through waivers.
Yeah, unless they see if there's unless another day where a random day where someone else gets waived, but they'd have to have something in place to trade for someone. I mean, the ideal thing for them really is probably signing a guy who they can get on the Marlies right away, and then bringing him up right when you need him.
Or trading, and I floated this last week, or trading for somebody who's in the minors right now, who's already cleared waivers, who is their number 3. And I went through it. I mean, there's not a lot there, but like a guy like Andrew Hammond has NHL experience.
Yeah.
And, you know, I mean, he's playing with Iowa right now in the AHL, and the Marlies need to help as well, because right now they have Kaskasuo and Eamon McAdam as their 2 goaltenders. So, I mean, it wouldn't kill them to have a 3rd goalie there that could play some games and be ready in case They have to call him up.
You never want to use Evan McAdam at the NHL level.
No. Well, and they had to call him up early in the year because that was when Anderson was hurt and they had to play Sparks. So I mean but that's one concern. The other concern is the defense, and we all know, get ready, Russ, get ready to drink. Top 4D. We know that's what they need. We know that's probably what they're going for. But as I said last week, I think they need more than that. I think they need another depth defenseman because you look at what's happening right now. 3 guys in the minor leagues, Liljegren, Rose, and Borgman, are all out with injuries.
Yeah.
Igor Ozaganov, the guy they brought over from Russia, he's playing okay, but not phenomenal. And he's got the flu. So the last 3 games, they played Martin Marincin and Justin Hall. Marincin was the worst defenseman on either team on Saturday in the 5-3 win over the Rangers, and Justin Hall hadn't played in 7 weeks and looked at yesterday. So I say they need to go out before the deadline, not only to get that guy, the guy who can play with Riley and on the top 2 pairings, but also Kevin BX is playing in the Spengler Cup. All it is a contract. Maybe he's too slow, but he's a veteran. He's played in playoffs before. It costs you nothing but money and a contract for 1 year. Something like that.
I have to commend you, Mike. I do. I was watching something on MLB.com or on MLB Network earlier on the 56-game hitting streak of Joe DiMaggio, and you being a Yankees fan, I think your streak of bringing up top 4 defensemen goes past Joe DiMaggio's streak. It's been for 2 years straight.
It's been more than that, but yeah, I mean because
on this show
they have not addressed it. So until you address it, I'm going to keep friggin' bringing it up.
There's no doubt in my mind that 3 weeks before the trade deadline, the rumor mill is going to go into overdrive with Kyle Dubas.
Yes.
And I think within that 10-day period before the trade deadline, I think he makes an early strike. Mm-hmm. And I think he does a couple bold things because he knows, one, this is the best year that he's going to have a chance to do this with the salary cap where he can load up.
Right.
They don't need the first round draft pick. They don't need it at all. He will be bold.
That Peter, and he's got 6. I wrote about this a couple days ago. Compared to all the other contenders in the East, Pittsburgh, Washington, Tampa, they have almost $6 million in cap space plus Nathan Horton on LTIR.
Yeah.
So that means almost $10 million in cap space. The only team that rivals them in terms of having all their draft picks, having a pool of prospects, and having enough cap room to add is Boston. Other than that, the Leafs are in the best position to make a run this year, and not sell the farm.
And what they have to do is they have to prepare for the fact that no matter what, they are going to probably have to play Boston. And you have to and whether it's first round or later on, it would be second round actually.
Well, it could be first. I mean,
it could be first or it could be second.
If they don't catch Tampa,
enough artillery, not just shooters, but enough artillery across the lineup to manage that. You just do. And then, I mean, and as we saw with the Jets and the Preds last year, I mean, the Jets had nothing left after this series. So not only do you not have, you have to have enough to go further, because that's the same thing. I expect Kevin Cheveldayoff to do a move exactly the same way based on where they are, because the Leafs and the Jets are almost the exact same team in terms of wins, how they're winning, and the firepower, but they still have some holes. I mean, I think there are serviceable guys around that Kyle Dubas can pick up on defense. It's like last year with Enstrom, we didn't know he was injured. They acquired Joe Morrow. Whatever Joe Morrow is, he's Joe Morrow, but he gave them the depth.
You just need a capable body, and switching it to
so a couple things. Of course, the chat room's bringing up that Babcock likes Cronwall, but if you do watch Cronwall play, he literally is on one leg. Like when Kevin pointed that out to me, you could see the way he favors.
And we don't know. That's a good thing. And we don't know if Cronwall wants to play for Babcock again. There's a lot of rumor about like some bad blood there back from the Detroit days. Cronwall's probably going to retire at the end of the year. Does he want another crack, another kick at the can? Maybe. But I mean, and switching it to Boston for a sec, Russ. I mean,
wait, before you go to Boston, Bill C needs to know in the chat room, would you vote for David Ortiz for the Hall of Fame?
No, because of steroids.
Okay.
Not because I mean, if he didn't get accused of using steroids, and I know he wasn't suspended, but he's widely known to have been on the list.
He was on the list.
He was on the list. So if he's on the list, that means
he was on the list that wasn't supposed to get out. That's true.
Right. He's guilty. I would not vote for A-Rod for the Hall of Fame. I would not vote for David Ortiz for the Hall. I would not vote for Clemens or Bonds. If you did steroids, you are done.
And Bill C may not like this. I would not put David Ortiz in either. All right, so we can move on.
Okay, so with the Bruins, and this is the thing. You look at the depth of their organization, and if you're going in at the deadline and you want to get yourself, now the rumors they're interested in Jeff Carter, they're looking for a number 3 center. They're also looking probably for some depth on defense if Chara has some problems coming back. You're talking Forsbacka Karlsson. You're talking Bjork. You're talking Zaboral, Senyshyn, Studnicka. You had like 6, 7, 8 really good prospects plus their draft picks. They're so loaded that they can trade 1 or 2 of those guys to load up for a cup run. So and the Leafs don't have as many prospects as the Bruins do, but they have some pretty decent ones, and they have all their draft picks. So that's where these teams have an advantage. They can load up at the deadline.
It's interesting about the Bruins because you could see where they're good. You could also see where they're still sort of lacking some depth. Now, I think, it was a shame that Vakanainen had that concussion because I think he would have been a good fill for them, and now he's going to play for World Juniors. He's over there.
Right.
But when he comes back, he might be able to help him a bit on the blue line. If he does, maybe that gives them a blue liner to trade. I don't know. I mean, they're still a little thin there. Even forward-wise, they're still a little thin. If they lose, look, you could say this about a lot of teams, but if they lose Bergeron, if he weren't in the playoffs, where would the Boston Bruins really be? Mm-hmm. They would probably be first or second round, and that's it.
They survived a month without Bergeron as a one-line team, moving Krejci up to the number 1 line between Pasternak and Marchand. So now, they're going to try to be a 2-line team, and then that will help them potentially move forward. But I mean, it's going to be a challenge for them, just like it's going to be a challenge for Toronto.
And their fourth line's pretty good. There's guys I like. I can't think of the center's name on the fourth line who I like. Is it Cole Bardreau?
I'm sorry, who was it?
Cole Bardreau, is that?
No, Colby Cave. They're using Colby Cave.
Maybe it's one of the wingers. I forget. Let me look it up. But they do have some other players, but they're just not producing. That's the issue.
No Archieri.
No, it's not him though. But I know
Danton Heinem, Joachim Nordstrom.
No, but Nordstrom was a good pickup. But he's only scoring slightly more than Carolina. That's the problem there.
Chris Wagner is the prototypical Boston Bruin cheap shot artist. Okay. No, let's talk about Peter, because you mentioned it in the chat here. I didn't see a lot of
Sean Corrali. I like Sean Corrali, and I do think he's been pretty effective, but there's a little bit missing there. There is, and
they
hasn't produced.
They could use 1 or 2 forwards and a defenseman, and they have the assets to be able to do that type of move. So, I mean, I'm not saying they're going to trade guys who are former first-round picks just for a plug, but they can give up draft picks, like lower round, mid-round draft picks, to add players that will help them in a cup run. And then I think that's exactly what Dubas is going to do. Dubas has the advantage of being able to take salary back from teams because he's got cap space. Yeah. And that is invaluable because look at what Pittsburgh, look at what Washington, look at what Tampa Bay, they don't have a lot of space. They have the assets, but they don't have a lot of space to fit these guys. And they would almost have to move somebody out, like a Tyler Johnson for Tampa or a Burakovsky in Washington, who's been rumored to be on the trade block.
I mean, as it stands today in the East, I think Tampa is the only team that could beat Washington. I mean, I really do. I don't think there's any other team, Boston included, that can beat them unless they really get somebody that changes the complexion of the team.
What Peter said is the point, though. Like the Nashville-Winnipeg point. Yeah, Toronto could get through the Atlantic. They could maybe beat Boston and get through Tampa, but what will they be like? And facing Washington, if Washington gets through the Metro,
right?
I mean, the whole thing is, whoever wins the Atlantic is going to play the lowest wild card team. That probably will come from either be like say Buffalo or Montreal or somebody who's in fourth spot in the Metro.
I mean, it's going to take a monumental collapse or a bad injury for Washington not to make it to the conference final.
Right. Yeah. Now, Peter, you were mentioning the officiating in the Jets Canucks game.
So I saw it written about a couple places, and it was suspect. This is a really interesting game in that it was a 1-0 Jets win, but there was no shortage of drama. Laurent Brossoit, playing it in his hometown. I didn't realize he grew up in Surrey, BC. His mom and his grandmother lived there, and they were in attendance. He stoned the Canucks. It was unbelievable what he did. But the real story that was sort of starting to come out, I saw it on Twitter and I read it about it next day in a couple of places, was the officiating and how bad it was. For instance, Ben Sherratt, not only did he clothesline, not only did he cross-check Mott in the face, he clotheslined him at the same time with his stick. It was the most incredible thing, right in front of a linesman with a trailing ref, and there was no call. Elias Pettersson was pulled down 100 times. He was slashed across the hand. The Jets they absolutely abused him all game, and he couldn't get a call. It went on and on. Now, as a Winnipeg blogger and stuff, you sort of say okay, interesting, you're getting away with murder, which they pretty much did, but it shouldn't have happened. And that's always going to catch up when it's the team you want to see win on your end. And it sort of reiterated a thing that the NHL is in a really funny space right now. Goal scoring is up, but no one's really figured out why. And I don't believe penalties are up. So it's not all happening on the power play, but I'm prepared to be corrected on that. So the NHL needs to deal with some of the stuff because players are getting away with things knowing that they're not calling as much because they don't want to have so many power plays. And this is this weird thing. And Saturday night was an exhibit A of the problems that are going to happen if the NHL doesn't get a grip on this.
But they will. It's going to change in the playoffs. It always does.
But the playoffs, they usually don't call anything, Russ. You got to commit murder in the playoffs, right? And
it's been a mix. It's been a mix. They do calm it down, but they still call. I mean, they do. It goes back to the old hockey where they don't call it in the third period, but they do call it late in games now. I mean, we have seen playoff games with power plays. We do.
But I don't know. It was interesting. And I think it was something I just hadn't really noticed until it was so blatantly obvious that one team was getting away with everything. It just happened to be the Jets. It's just interesting. I don't know. I think it's worth watching. I think we're going to see more people talking about this or looking for this kind of thing where it's just, I don't know.
Well, I mean, and this is the thing. I mean, I know that it's been a complaint for Toronto fans. I believe the Leafs are still the least. They're the least penalized team, and they're the team that has the least amount of power plays. Yeah. Now you can say that that's a product of them not being an aggressive team, putting themselves in certain situations, but. You do pick up, and I know that I picked up on this in the game yesterday against Detroit, where there were calls that should have been made that I thought weren't made, and I don't know whether does the effectiveness of the Toronto power play and the fact that they're more than likely going to score a goal, does that make the referee less likely to call a penalty unless it's really brutal? I don't know.
They still do the makeup call, which bothers everybody. I saw that in the Flyers game live the other day. So we do still see those kinds of inconsistencies. We probably are always going to, unless there's going to be robots, and I don't really want robots. So right. I'm anti-robot. I mean, I admit that.
You've been watching too many Terminator movies. Okay. Ackman talked about this a couple weeks ago.
We're not going to talk about the Flyers game?
Well, that's what I'm leading to that.
All right.
I talked about it a couple weeks ago. Nick Kyprios talked about it yesterday or Saturday on the Saturday headlines on the Sportsnet regarding Jonathan Quick, and that ties into the Flyers goaltending situation where Carter Hart played on Saturday and did not play. Michael Neuvirth finally makes a start against the Rangers at MSG yesterday, and the Flyers get a 3-2 overtime victory. They've bounced back since the firing of Hackstall. I think they're 3-1 right now, Russ?
Yes, 3-1 this week. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a little bit of a bounce back, but even with that, they're still like way out of the race here. If you would think that there's going to be, and we talked about this before, that there would be a move after the trade freeze drops off, which is, I believe, Thursday, the 27th. And I don't know whether Quick makes a lot of sense because it's not a 1-year fix. It's not a stopgap to get to Carter Hart. It's you're locking yourself into a veteran goalie who's 32 years old for 4 more years. Not at a ridiculous price, but it's somebody you're committing to, and it's somebody you're committing to. And as you made the point, Russ, this is not a guy who's going to be a backup. So if they go down this road, what does it say for Carter Hart?
Well, I mean, he'll still be there. He's still under team control, and he'll have to wait. And he could come up and be the backup, and he probably will be the backup for the next few years. And then if Quick has some sort of injury where he can't play anymore, then he'll eventually get the job. That's what I see happening. Now, I know other people would probably see it being a tandem. I don't think Jonathan Quick wants any part of being a tandem. I think he would probably ask those kinds of questions before anything like a trade happens because he holds the hammer. Like, he doesn't have to go if they even try and trade for him. So I don't know if it's going to be that. I think it's interesting that Michael Neuvirth played well yesterday just because everybody expected him not to play well. And he did. And so – and he won in a shootout, which, the Flyers aren't a great shootout team. That's an understatement. So now you have to – it makes everything a mess. I would say the 2 positives for the Flyers besides the 2 points is, Nolan Patrick got a shootout goal, in the victory. That was nice. And the defense was okay. Like, they were pretty good. There were still breakdowns, but it was okay. I do think the Rangers had their own issues themselves, but they're going to. I mean, they know what kind of team they are. I still don't know if the Flyers know what kind of team they are.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's exactly it.
I mean, they're caught in the middle of the road here, Peter. It's like,
well, they're caught in the middle of the road because of their own actions.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Again, we've said it, and we've X said it, you've said it, Russ, Mike, you've said it, I've said it. The way they went about dealing with Ron Hextall and then allowing the 2 madmen to convince the CEO that they knew the better Flyers way. Well, you know what? I'm going to be really harsh about this. The Flyers way went with Ed Snyder. You can have a spirit. He was their spiritual leader. He was the owner. You're not going to replace Ed Snyder by just having this ethereal way about you. He was unique to that organization, what he did in business and everything. You need to take some of his philosophies, but Ed Snyder's way is not always going to be managed in the same way without Ed Snyder there. That's just, in my opinion, poor organizational behavior. I think what Ron Hextall was doing was manageable, and I think they could have kept on the path to deal with this in a better way. Yeah. Because what they've done now is just open up it's Pandora's box, can of worms. Pick your cliche.
Well, and I know this was said after because remember the firing of Hextall happened after the Flyers lost 6-0 in Toronto on a Saturday night, and there was no pushback from the Flyers, and that sort of goes against the organizational ethic of Ed Snyder, where at least if you're going to lose, at least make the other team pay for it physically. And this team is not built that way, and the league is not that way anymore. But I think that the Flyers still want that sort of emotional physicality.
No, they want it. Matter of fact, there has been a concerted effort for players to show it, for the broadcast team to talk about it. It is now their new marketing tool to sort of go back to that.
but they don't have a team that reflects that.
Not yet.
Now, and that's where
I'm pretty sure they're heading in that direction.
Right. So if you
no, I mean I just do.
Ryan Reeves better get his bags packed in Vegas. No. No, but yeah, I mean, and
they've got like 6 players in the World Juniors. I mean, the legacy of Ron Hextall is in the World Juniors.
Yeah, no, honestly, I have no problem with what job Ron Hextall did in terms of restocking the shelves in Philadelphia. It's what I'm going to have a problem with is if all of a sudden Chuck Fletcher comes in and starts emptying the shelves for short-term gain. It's like, I don't think they're going to do that. I think he's a smart enough hockey guy that he won't do, like, he won't empty the farm, but
right.
You were on the right path. You developed and you stockpiled talent, and the whole point of it was to develop it and to get it in the NHL and have young guys, and then augment that with free agent signings or trades. That's the way it works now, and I don't think you can go out and be like Bobby Clark was 25 years ago and just be a wild trader and try to make deals to put together a team. It doesn't work that way anymore.
No, it doesn't work that way, but clearly Fletcher's working hard. We're going to see on the 27th, 28th what comes out of that. If nothing comes out of that, there's going to be pressure from the other side that wants change. And that's going to be the weird part, because I don't think the entire fan base wants that. Matter of fact, I think the fan base is split. I do.
All right, Russ, let's take some questions in the chat for the next
questions from the chat room. This is, this always scares me, Mike. All right.
Yeah. Cousin Ed, watch out.
Esmir's asking, what do we think about Toronto versus the Islanders playoffs this year?
Toronto would have to win the Atlantic, which they're sick. Tampa Bay is 14-1-1 in their last 16 games.
They're gonna cool off, Mike.
They're gonna cool off, but they're still, and they did cool off in the second half last year, but still.
They don't even have their goalie. They don't even have their number one goalie.
Yeah, Louis Domingue was standing on his head against Calgary last week. So it's like, they're just, everything is going right. So the odds of a Toronto Islander first round are slim.
It's remote. Yeah, it's
very remote.
Okay. Scott C asks, will the Panthers have a good second half like last year? 4-1 with Borgstrom. Yeah, I think they're bound to have a better second half. Bugner's still in there. I know he called out the big guns a couple weeks ago. They got a little production out of them, but I don't know. I'll be honest. I don't think Bugner's a good fit for that franchise. I just don't.
I'm not sure what the Panthers are.
Yeah.
Either. Like, it's without Luongo and net. It's they're a team in my they have some great pieces, but they're a team in transition. They need to add a little more and either or change coach or do something, but they need more than what they are if they're going to have any success.
They're an okay team. I've seen them twice in the last week. They're an okay team with Luongo playing well.
Yeah.
When Luongo played average against Toronto at home earlier in the week, they were not in the same league. I still don't think
that's what I'm saying. They don't seem to be an overly offensive team or a suffocating defensive team, and so I don't know what they are either.
I still love Ekblad as a player, but in the 2 games, I barely noticed him, Russ. He's not the guy since before the concussion.
He did well here in Philly.
Blackhawks recently, and that pumps your tires a little bit, but that's not saying much anymore.
No, he did well here in Philly, but that was the last time I saw him, so that was a while ago. I'm not sure either, but I thought at that time he was coming out of it. We'll see. It does take a little while, to hit the reset button when you have these concussions. We all know that.
And you have to consider one other thing. Trocheck is probably out for most of the year. Now, Borgstrom
is a big cog for them.
Borgstrom is an excellent young prospect, and if they think he's ready to basically replace Trocheck up the middle.
They're going to try it. I would try it.
Why not?
Scott says they're 4-1 with them. Borgstrom can be a difference maker, but I don't know if he's there yet. He's brand new with the NHL. I don't know if he's there yet. When I watched him in college, he was definitely a difference maker. He's got size and he's got skill. So we'll see. Mike says, what are the thoughts about the NHL testing out inserting clocks within the boards on the ice level? The problem that I have with that is what will happen is they'll never upgrade them, because the biggest thing that I started to see happening a year or two ago was the game clocks that get used at the arena were all the original game clocks from when the arena came into existence. So one day the Flyers clock broke, and I think we saw 2 or 3 other teams have clock issues as well.
What do you mean, like in the big center ice jumbotron things?
No, like the one that the timekeepers use.
Oh, interesting.
But I'm assuming if there's one big one on the boards, they're going to use that one. And I'm just worried about, technology getting old, it taking a beating, and then becoming not, useful anymore.
Yeah,
or at least not.
I've seen, you've got the center ice, you got the center scoreboard, and then you have the ones at the ends of each, at the ends behind, like on the banner on the outside, like in between the first and second deck. And I've seen sometimes where the clocks are not synced, where they're off. Where they're off by. So the thing is, if you put a clock, and I've heard somebody talk about this before, if you put a clock, say in the boards behind the net, so the players can see how much time is left, it better be in sync with what the actual time is.
That's my worry.
Yeah, and then you're going to have a video of the clock having 0.2 seconds left when the clock up there says it's 0, and then you have controversy all over the place.
Yeah, so we're going to say no, Mike. Sorry. Earl wants to know. Earl's just saying Quick could be a good mentor to Carter Hart. Sure, but again, it won't be this year. And yes, it would be in the future, but we're assuming he would be. You don't know if he'll be a good mentor or he's going to be Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers. We really don't know. Mm-hmm. All right. Bill C wants to know, who do you guys think is starting in net for the Bruins in the Winter Classic, Chuka or Halak? I think if they went with Halak, they would get the same reaction that the Flyers got from Brizgalov, where he walked out of that meeting and threw his gum in the garbage can and just never looked at that organization the same way again. I didn't just want to say threw it. He slammed it in there. He was pissed. I think Tuukka Rask will be pissed if he's not the goalie and Halak is. And
that reminds me of when the Canucks, when they hosted the Heritage Classic, and they started, I think it was Eddie Lack over Luongo. You got to be really smart about
Go back to Chicago when I interviewed Antti Ranta, and he was mad because Crawford had just sort of come back from injury and he was the starting goalie just in time for the Winter Classic. He was mad. He wasn't happy.
Think about it from this way when it comes to the Bruins. Right now Halak has the better statistics. Right. He's played better this year, obviously, based on that. Rask had that vacation, if you want to call it, and then he came back. We still don't know what the details of that was, but he's got another 2 years at $7 million. Based on the fact that the goaltending market right now is wide open and there are teams out there that desperately need goalies. If the Bruins had a mind to actually trade Rask, this would be the perfect time to do it. Short term left on the deal. He's still in his prime. He maybe needs to get out of Boston because he's faced a lot of criticism there. I just don't know. They don't have anything in the Zane McIntyre is not anything that you can depend on in the pipeline. They'd have to be going out and getting themselves another goaltender if they trade Rask.
True. All right. So Thomas asks, what's up with Jesper Fast? He's a good player having a mediocre year, 3 goals, 8 assists. He wasn't a few weeks ago. I think what's happening with him is the fact that there have been so many changes, line combination changes with David Quinn, that I think Fast is, sort of falling victim to that. He is a pretty steady Eddie. He's never going to be a big point guy, but there's certain things you can count on him for. And I just think, he is yet to click with line mates since all that's gone on.
Well, it's in seeing the Rangers on Saturday, I again question, I can't see them keeping guys like Hayes and Zuccarello. It makes no sense for them to keep them unless they can go out and re-sign them in the summer. I mean, these are guys who can still contribute and you can get something for. And that if you, as Jan was saying, if you pull back and don't trade Kevin Hayes at the deadline, then what the hell is the point of sort of saying we're going to bottom out or we're going to rebuild? That's a piece that you use to rebuild with.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
I totally
here's
agree.
an example. The other night against Anaheim, like Fast didn't even play. I'm not sure if he was hurt, but why wouldn't he play? Is Ryan Strome really better to play than Jesper Fast? No way.
Yeah, Fast is a capable player. He's proved himself in the playoffs the last few years, and when they were in the playoffs. I mean, I think like if he's not part of their mindset going forward, I mean, maybe he's a guy that they move out and get a draft pick for.
Yeah, yep, that definitely could happen. All right, let's see what else.
By the way, while you're looking for another question, I just have to bring this up because the situation continues to be really strange, and the fact that nothing has come out about it is even more strange. In the wake of the Berglund contract termination, there's been nothing filed by the PA in terms of a grievance.
Yeah.
Nothing at all. It's not like a Mike Richards situation. It's not like a Jake Dotchin situation. The contract was terminated. They ended it. And now there's like dead silence. And it's just so weird because I've never seen somebody so willing to just give up almost $12 million in salary. And I don't know if he just didn't want to be in Buffalo, but he hasn't signed in the KHL or the SHL. He hasn't signed with another team. It's just dead silence. It's just very strange what's going on with the whole Berglund thing.
It is. All right. So Bill C asks a great question. Seems like Svechnikov has been moved up in the Canes lineup, played with Aho and Teravainen yesterday. Do you guys think he'll break out in the second half? For that same rookie report that I did, I wrote about Svechnikov, and he's up to 10 goals. I do expect him to pick up steam. Aho is like third now in Canes history. He's had like 3 or 4 4-point games before the age or of the age of 22, and so that's a pretty big deal for them and him. And boy, he's just been even better than I thought he was, and I thought I built him up pretty good. But wow, he
unless Thomas Dundon is successful in finding that sniper he's been talking about on interviews for a while, Svechnikov is going to get primary power play and top 6 ice time. So, of course, he could very easily, he doesn't seem to be fazed by the NHL right now. He seems to be pretty level-headed and has a lot of talent. So I think he could have a really good second half. He's going to get the opportunity to do so.
Scott C asks, is Finland going to take home the gold? I don't know if we're going to do a World Junior show or mention it more next show. We could. Yeah. It's fine by me.
Yeah.
Although on another show, Adam Woden's show, I already told him because he asked me who I thought was winning. So I'll tell you, I don't think Finland's winning. I have Sweden winning. I didn't pick Finland because of Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, because some days he's the best goalie in that tournament and other days he's not. And I don't know if he's consistent enough for me yet to think he's going to win gold.
Well, here's the funny thing about Sweden. Sweden may be favored, or up there with Canada and the U.S. as one of the teams that can win, and they're going into this tournament without the 2 best defensemen that they had at last year's tournament. Dahlin is obviously with the Sabres. Liljegren had a high ankle sprain and is not going to play for them. And they're still, they have Brandstrom, they have a ton of Boquist, Sandin. They're really,
those 3 make them pretty formidable.
Yeah, I mean, they're really, really good. And I just have been tracking Canada right now. They've played a couple exhibition games.
Yeah.
And Peter, it's weird because there always seems to be unless you have a guy like Carter Hart or Carey Price, there always seems to be a debate about the goaltending with Canada.
Yep.
And right now, Michael DiPietro had 1 bad game. Ian Scott had a good game, and then they both played in the third exhibition game, and I guess they both gave up a couple goals. So right now it's a question. It sounds like it's going to be sort of like what Team USA did with Parsons and Wall a couple years ago, sort of rotate until you find which one is the best and then go with that guy.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I mean, I don't think there's a lot of optimism around Team Canada this year.
I picked them second, Peter. I did.
Yeah, I mean, they're always going to get a bit of a bump. They're playing at home. That's it. But one thing that is certain is that when it comes to producing hockey talent, the rest of the world is catching up quickly.
Yeah.
And I mean, the no better example of that is Between the Pipes. Like, this country is not producing goaltenders like it used to.
No.
And that should
be. And actually, wasn't it 2 years ago, Carter Hart came in relief and they won the silver, and then last year the gold with him. So he wasn't even the starter, 2 years ago.
Right. It's one of those ebb and flow things. And, Hockey Canada is doing a whole bunch of things grassroots wise to change hockey programs for the trickle up effect of skill development and everything. But by the sheer numbers of people who play hockey here, you just don't have enough people who are in terms qualified coaches at youth levels. Like when you're talking 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, Toronto has its own entity in the GTHL and all the things that come with that. But Toronto's not the only place where people play hockey either. And, there's just a bit of a funny ebb and flow here. And
I'll tell you what's not happening.
Challenges with it.
I'll tell you what's not happening in Canada. What's not happening in Canada is what has happened in the U.S. over the years, and that is Canadians, Russians, all kinds of people moving here, having kids, having them come up in the hockey program, then all of a sudden they're Americans. That didn't really happen for Canada.
Yeah.
But, based on laws and the way things are now, that could turn around for Canada because they're very open about that. So I kind of wonder if that's going to be something that helps them down the line.
Well, yeah. I mean,
as someone who is a director in a minor hockey association in Winnipeg and dealing with some things, there's some very confounding trickle down problems of communication, ideas, messaging, and consistency that come from Hockey Canada. And there's a lot of great stuff out there that make you feel really positive about it. But going from the top down to the bottom, there's a lot of problems and not a lot of efforts being put in to solve them.
Yeah, I'll just say this. Oh, sorry, Mike. Go ahead.
I was just say to your point, Caden Primo, who's Keith Primo's son, is one of the 2 goalies for Team USA. Keith Primo's Canadian, so basically it was a product of Keith staying in the U.S. And
he's from Jersey.
Yeah.
So there you go.
No, I know.
That's it. You know what? And the other thing is, because there are a number of people hired out of Winnipeg over the last 15 years who have gone on to be coaching and working with programs in Denmark, in Finland, in Sweden. Like, eventually what happens is you want to improve in a sport, you go find the people who have the heritage and the history of the sport. So if someone wanted to become really good at American football, you wouldn't hire a bunch of Canadians. You go hire Americans to do it. And what's interesting, I think it was last year at the Olympics, both the coaches of the winning teams in curling were both Canadian, if I recall correctly. Yes. There you go. Right? Like, eventually you draw from who has the expertise.
I'm going to just say this in the nicest possible way. I think sometimes, like, Hockey Canada is too Canadian.
Yeah, it totally. No, Russ, there's problems. And, there's a guy who's now president of the Oilers who rather abruptly left Hockey Canada.
Yeah.
And there's a bit of a backstory there. It's not a public one, but there's a backstory there.
All right. So last question here is from Izmir. What can the Rangers get by trading Matt Zuccarello? I think you can get as high as a 2nd-round pick. It might be a conditional second, but you can get as high as a 2nd-round pick and maybe a prospect if he turns his game around. His game is not very good at the moment.
Yeah, I was going to say, I looked at his point totals. I was a little surprised that he was
And he had a bad blind turnover the other day. I don't remember if it was in the Flyers game or the game before that. And it literally is one of those where you don't look, you clear it up the ice, it goes off the board, it goes to a defenseman, it goes to a player, and it's in your own net. It was one of those.
Yeah. Just a little note here. Rick Jenneret, the Sabres play-by-play announcer, he was taken on a stretcher out of the press box during the game, or in the third period of the game against.
We should say, hold on, Peter's not smiling over Rick Jenneret. He's smiling over something I put in the chat room about his third degrees thing. So I just don't want Peter getting in trouble for smiling when Mike's saying something serious about Rick Jenneret.
I was too busy. Okay, but Rick is fine. He messaged everyone via John Vogel, who was one of the reporters contacted, and said he was doing well, and he is going to be back in the press box at the KeyBank Center when the Sabres resume after the break. So,
great.
I grew up listening to Rick. I've met him a few times. He's a real great guy. And, I think he wants to keep doing this until he can't do it anymore. And it was just a little bit of a scare, but everything seems to be fine now. And we hope he continues for a long time. So, glad everything is good, Rick. And we just want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas. We're not going to do a show tomorrow. We'll be back on Wednesday. Maybe talk a little bit about the World Junior.
I'll be in the movies tomorrow. You could go with the cliches and all that, but that's where I'll be.
I used to work in a movie theater, Russ. It's like, please. It was like you knew who was coming on at 12 o'clock on Christmas Day.
Yep.
It was like 150 Jews.
Yep.
Nothing wrong with it.
No, it's true.
I think it was a great thing. Hey, it kept me employed for a long time. Okay. For Peter Tessier, for Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Agello. Thanks for watching. And remember, without the buzz, it's just, I've had too many eggnogs. Without the buzz, it's just hockey.